No shortage of things to talk about with Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall, who is here on KCMO Talk Radio. We'll get to all the upcoming election stuff, but I do need to ask him because he came out forcefully against KU professor Phil Lowcock, who last week went viral for all the wrong reasons. If you missed it, the professor who has since left KU went viral for something that he said in a lecture of his. And it was something that when you look back on it, you say to yourself, how did this guy even have a chance to keep his job? Well, thankfully he didn't. Here's what was said.
Guys are smarter than girls. You got some serious problems. That's what frustrates me. There are going to be some males in our society that will refuse to vote for a potential female president because they don't think females are smart enough to be president. We could line all those guys up and shoot them. They clearly don't understand the way the world works. Did I say that? Scratch that from the recording. I don't want the deans hearing that I said that.
So Senator Marshall obviously called for KU to relieve this professor of his duties. He was allowed to leave the university. He's no longer there, Senator. I give him credit for that. But he wasn't technically fired, as I understand it. So what do you make of the decision?
Well, Peter, people ask, why is President Trump had 2 assassination attempts on him this past 6 months, three or 4 months as well. But it's statements like this. And there are people out there that don't have their wits about them, that are psychotic, that listen to something like this and say, oh, here's a professor saying we should line up people and shoot them. Look, I'm a proud KU medical school graduate. There's many other KU graduates out there that are disheartened to hear this. I'm glad he's gone, and it was a sad day, and I'm sure that KU just feels horrible about it. That's not what KU is at all in any way, shape, or form, and I'm glad the guy's gone, and that's that.
Do you think there is a broader cultural issue to address? Because I would argue that if this guy is saying something like this, it's not the first time he said something along these lines, and he clearly feels comfortable enough to say something like this. So do you think that KU should do more to look at what other professors are saying?
Absolutely. And to your point, I went on campus to visit with some Jewish students when the protests were occurring, and they told me that some of the KU teachers were participating in these protests, and everyone has the right to do that. I would kind of question if you should be protesting at your job place, and they were allowing these protesters to go into the buildings where history classes on Israel were being taught, that type of thing. So they were targeting it, they were allowing it, they were permissive. I would just question, how history is being taught, and it's not unique to KU. I think it's happening in all the school systems. I was with a private school group just yesterday in Johnson County, and to listen to them why they left the public school system was so disheartening, Pete. When I was growing up, when my kids were growing up, the best public school system in the country was in Johnson County, and now their scores are falling. Their good teachers are leaving. There's something amok. This is why we need to make sure that there's local control of the schools, whether it's KU or Shawnee Mission Northwest. We need local control of our school. We need to go back to the basic values that we were all raised upon.
Kansas U.S. Senator Roger Marshall's here on KCMO. So early voting, can you believe it, getting underway this weekend here on the Kansas side of our state line. And what is your message to especially Republican voters who overwhelmingly support you, as I think there's a movement now to get out not just the vote, but get out the early vote?
So absolutely. Now, I believe that early voting in Johnson County starts on Saturday. But for sure it's open next week, and encourage people to go to the Secretary of State's website and ask for the location near you, whether it's near your house or near where your workplace is or on your way to and from work. There's multiple locations across Johnson County where you can early vote. Don't wait till the election day unless you have to. You just don't know what's going to come up that day. Maybe it's going to snow that day. Maybe you'll have a sick kid. So if you get the chance, go ahead and early vote. And as a report came out yesterday, Pete, I'm sure you saw it, that 30% of our cameras on the border are not working. Now, Border Patrol reported that to me months ago. I questioned Mayorkas about it. He was very ambiguous, but now we've confirmed a third of the cameras on the border are not working. My point is this. When you walk into that voting booth, I hope you ask yourself, are you safer today than you were 4 years ago? Is your family safer today than it was 4 years ago? Last point I make, we did a telephone town hall just recently, thousands of senior citizens, and over 60% of them do not feel safe in their own community. In Kansas, senior citizens, 60% of them don't feel safe in their own community. Something's wrong. We need a new sheriff in town. Kamala Harris owns this border problem. She owns this safety and security issue that our families don't feel safe anymore.
So when you look at this general election, I mean, it's showing, at least the polling would suggest, it is a coin flip, toss-up, whatever you want to call it right now, Senator. So what do you think that this election ultimately comes down to, and how do you think Donald Trump should be closing here the next 2.5, 3 weeks?
Yeah, Pete, what I feel is momentum's on our side, and you and I have experienced it. Your listeners have experienced. You sat there in Arrowhead Stadium. You sat at a KU basketball game, a K-State football game. You're down by 6 points, and there's 2 minutes left, and Patrick Mahomes got the ball. No one's leaving, right? So momentum is on our side. I think you're seeing the polling clearly show a big shift here in the last 2 weeks, and I started feeling it about 3 weeks ago out when I'm campaigning with other senators and with J.D. Vance that momentum is swinging. And I feel that. So I think we stay on message. We talk about policies. We don't attack anybody. Let's just stay on policy. And the two things that's still the top two concerns, whether you're a 19-year-old at Johnson County Community College or you're a senior citizen there in one of the care centers, your number 1 and 2 issues are your safety and security and the cost of gas and groceries. And what's not coming down is the cost of insurance, the cost of housing, and the cost of child care. We did a telephone town hall just last night with thousands of young adults across Kansas, and those remain their biggest concerns and issues. And those inflation numbers, I just saw a report today, groceries are going back up again.
How do you feel, Senator, about some of the big races here in our area? We know that Johnson County in particular has leaned blue the last couple of cycles. We know the Republicans running, whether it's Dr. Prasanth Reddy against Sharice Davids. We know that we've got Doug Bedford running for sheriff as well. How do you feel about some of those things happening right here in our backyard?
Well, I just can't stress to folks, this is another reason to get out and vote, that it does matter who your congressman is. It certainly matters who your sheriff is and your district, your county attorney as well. That if you believe that law and order is an issue, Sheriff Bedford, he's going to be Sheriff Bedford, I hope. It was a great choice, a career law enforcement officer, a person that I really have enjoyed getting to know over this process as well. But it's important who our county clerks are, our school board members, commissioners, all those types of things are vitally important. My job is to try to protect everybody from some of the horrible legislation coming out of Washington. I want to turn them back to local control, but we need people with those traditional Kansas values making those local decisions.
All right, Senator Roger Marshall on KCMO. Who are you feeling better about right now, the Chiefs or your Kansas State Wildcats who moved to 5-1 last weekend?
Well, that's a good question. I think it was a big coming out moment for Avery Johnson to make his, to have his first big comeback win as well. I think playing on the road is always a tough place. The Chiefs, we got to figure out what we're going to do at wide receiver, Pete. I really appreciate the wide receiver core we've got left. I had a conversation with Isaiah Pacheco a couple weeks ago just to wish him well as he's recovering. But I think we're going to probably have to go out and get a wide receiver, don't you?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it, but hey, won the Super Bowl with a mishmash at wide receiver last year, so I don't mind taking my chances. Depends what it costs, right? I'm not giving up any high draft picks for these guys.
Yep, makes sense. Yeah, if we get someone for a 3rd or 4th round draft pick, I think we better, and we can find the money to move around. I think we could use one more wide receiver.
I'm open to that. Senator Marshall, thank you for the time as always. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Pete. Have a great day, everybody.
All right, Roger Marshall on KCMO Talk Radio.